It happens in the one place the palace never expects: chaos, a charity gala meant to celebrate Catherine's work and project unity. Camilla steps toward the microphone, smiling, composed, ready to claim the room. But before she can speak, Princess Anne moves, not loudly, not dramatically, just decisively. A hand, a glance, one quiet instruction, and suddenly Camilla is blocked. The audience freezes, because this wasn't a mistake, it was a message. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. This gala wasn't supposed to be complicated. It was designed for the cameras and the donors. The kind of high-profile night where everything is timed to project stability, Catherine's work highlighted, her leadership reinforced, the royal brand polished into something clean and reassuring. Every detail was curated to look effortless. But insiders know events like this are never effortless, they are engineered. They are royal optics in motion, and on nights like this, the palace expects one thing above all: control. That's why Camilla's planned speech was never just a few words. It was a power move disguised as support. Visibility. Narrative control. A chance to stand at the center of Catherine's success and quietly attach herself to the glow of it. In royal life, proximity is currency. And a microphone at the right moment is not merely a tool, it's a throne you can borrow for 90 seconds. Camilla walking toward that microphone with composure wasn't innocent. It was intentional. The kind of intent that says, I am part of this story too. I will be seen as part of this victory. And then Anne intervenes. Not with confrontation, not with raised voices, not with a scene that would make tabloids drool. Anne's intervention is calm, but absolute, which makes it 10 times more frightening. She doesn't ask. She doesn't negotiate. She acts. The quiet instruction carries weight. The kind of weight that makes staff respond without hesitation. That is what stuns the room, not just that Camilla is blocked, but that she is blocked so smoothly it feels like protocol. As if everyone involved already understood that tonight had a line, and Camilla was not allowed to cross it. Catherine is caught in the emotional crossfire instantly. She has to remain diplomatic, smiling, poised, gracious, while watching a public boundary being drawn in the middle of her own event. The shock isn't only about Camilla being stopped. The shock is what it implies, that someone believed Camilla's words were a risk, that the palace feared the wrong message landing in the wrong room in front of the wrong donors. Catherine's public face holds steady, but inside, a colder realization begins to form. Her charity gala is not just a celebration anymore. It is a stage where power can be tested, claimed, and denied. And then there's Charles, or the absence of him. His reaction is restrained, or he is not visible in the moment, and that silence speaks louder than any speech Camilla never gives. Because if Charles wanted Camilla at that microphone, Anne would not have moved the way she did. Anne's authority is not casual. It is earned, respected, and rarely deployed publicly unless she is certain she will not be overruled. So Charles's lack of immediate intervention suggests something deeper. Either he allowed this to happen, or he could not stop it without triggering something far worse. Both possibilities are explosive. The room stays outwardly calm, but the atmosphere changes. Donors exchange glances that are too quick and too sharp to be innocent. Trustees and senior figures suddenly look less like guests and more like witnesses. Staff move with the tense efficiency of people who have just avoided a disaster. And Camilla, forced to stop mid-moment, doesn't just lose the microphone. She loses the illusion of inevitability. That matters more than humiliation. Because influence survives on perception. The perception that you cannot be blocked. The perception that you are always included. Tonight, in front of the very people who fund royal causes and shape royal narratives, Camilla is shown as stoppable. Then, the cliffhanger arrives in the only way palace truths ever surface: through a whisper. An aide, close enough to know and frightened enough to leak it quietly, says Camilla's speech was pulled due to unapproved content. Two words that turn a small interruption into a major threat. Unapproved means it wasn't just about timing, it was about substance. It means someone saw what Camilla intended to say, or feared what she intended to imply, and decided it could not be allowed to land. And once that whisper spreads, the gala stops being a celebration and becomes a hunt for what Camilla was about to reveal. A cancelled speech isn't silence, it's a vacuum, and vacuums get filled by suspicion. Rumours ignite that Camilla's remarks weren't merely congratulatory, but strategic, a subtle reframe of Catherine's charity as a shared royal initiative, a positioning move meant to place Camilla at the centre of a success she didn't build. And when Anne stopped her, it wasn't just about protecting Catherine, it was about stopping a narrative takeover in real time. Because the most dangerous thing Camilla could have done on that stage wasn't insult Catherine. It was claim her without ever saying the word claim. That is how influence works in the palace, through phrasing, positioning, and the quiet rewriting of who belongs at the centre. A charity gala may look like an evening of speeches and donations, but insiders know it's also a battlefield where reputations are built and public roles are defined. If Camilla could stand at that microphone and recast Catherine's work as a shared royal effort, she wouldn't just gain visibility, she would gain ownership. And ownership, once accepted by donors and media, becomes almost impossible to take back. The whispers say the palace allegedly approved a shortened script, something safe and ceremonial, designed to keep the night focused on Catherine and the cause. A few warm sentences. Nothing controversial, nothing that would change the story of the evening. But the tension rises around one detail. Camilla intended to freestyle, not because she couldn't follow a script, because she didn't want to. Because improvisation creates opportunity. Improvisation lets you insert meaning that wasn't approved. It lets you slide a new narrative into the room while everyone is clapping too politely to object. Donor circles, already alert after Anne's intervention, report hearing hints of a controversial announcement inside the speech, not a bomb thrown openly, but a subtle pledge, a future promise, a phrase that could have sounded supportive while quietly shifting authority. Something like a new era of collaboration, a fresh structure, a stronger unified direction, words that are harmless on paper, but lethal in context. Because donors don't just fund causes, they fund leadership. And the moment donors believe a new figure is steering the mission, their loyalty begins to migrate. That's why Anne's role becomes more chilling the more you hear. Anne is said to have seen the draft or been warned by staff. Either explanation is terrifying, because it suggests a pre-existing fear. It suggests people inside the palace believed Camilla might use the microphone to move pieces on the board. It also suggests Anne didn't act on instinct alone, she acted on information. On certainty. On the kind of warning that makes someone like Anne take the risk of a public intervention. Catherine's team is stunned because the gala messaging was planned weeks in advance. Every line, every guest, every tone was carefully set to present Catherine's work as the heart of the evening. If Camilla's speech was going to drift into shared initiative territory, it would sabotage that plan in front of the exact people Catherine needs most: donors who want clarity, trustees who want stability, and influential supporters who read power shifts like weather. Catherine's team doesn't fear one awkward moment. They fear the ripple, how a single unapproved phrase can become tomorrow's headline, and tomorrow's headline can become next month's reality. Camilla's camp, of course, claims misunderstanding. They frame Anne's intervention as overreaction, a miscommunication, the kind of embarrassing mix-up that happens in live events. Anne's camp says the opposite. Protocol breach. Not a mistake, a breach. A word that implies intent. A word that implies someone tried to step outside the boundaries for a reason. And suddenly the gala feels less like charity and more like a crime scene, with everyone replaying the moment and asking what exactly was about to be said that required such a clean, public stop. Then comes the cliffhanger that transforms suspicion into something sharper. A staffer suggests the speech included a line about future leadership of Catherine's foundation. That phrase doesn't just change the meaning of the interruption, it justifies it. Because future leadership isn't gratitude, it's structure, it's authority. It's a declaration wrapped in polite language, the kind of declaration that would place Camilla closer to the center than Catherine's own team ever intended. And once you hear that, Anne's intervention stops looking like personal dislike and starts looking like protection of Catherine's role, protection of donor confidence, protection of the monarchy's next era from being quietly hijacked on a stage built for unity. Because if Camilla tried to claim leadership in Catherine's charity world, it explains why Anne didn't just interrupt, she intervened. Princess Anne isn't a woman who improvises in public. Every move she makes is measured. And that's why her intervention is so shocking. She didn't block Camilla out of emotion. She did it out of certainty. The kind of certainty that comes when you've seen the inside of the machine and you know exactly what happens if you let the wrong person seize a microphone at the wrong moment. Anne's reputation for duty turns that single moment into something bigger than a gala mishap. It feels like an institutional signal, quiet, disciplined, unmistakable. People who don't even like Anne still respect her because she doesn't act for applause. She acts for stability. So when she steps in, the room reads it the way palace rooms always read Anne. This is not personal drama. This is containment. And that interpretation spreads faster than any whisper, because Anne's body language is never unclear. Calm. Absolute. Final. The deeper tension is that Anne's loyalty has always been complicated. She is loyal to Charles as a brother, yes, but even more loyal to the institution that made them both. And when those loyalties collide, Anne chooses the monarchy's stability every time. That is why her intervention feels like a line being drawn in stone. It suggests she believed Camilla's words could have caused damage that would outlive embarrassment, damage to donor confidence, damage to Catherine's standing, damage to the Queen's charitable legacy, damage to the fragile illusion that everything inside the palace is still under control. And whether Anne is acting on higher guidance or personal conviction tied to the Queen's legacy, the result is the same. She positions Catherine as protected. Not through praise, not through a public declaration, but through action. The message is brutal in its simplicity. Catherine's stage is not available for anyone to seize, not tonight, not in front of donors, not under the banner of unity. In that one controlled move, Anne implicitly validates Catherine's status and signals that Camilla's access has limits. The humiliation is surgical, no insult spoken, no scene created, yet the outcome is unmistakable. Camilla is stopped, publicly, smoothly, as if the palace itself has decided she must not be allowed to steer this moment. Catherine built the gala to spotlight causes, not conflict. But the moment Anne blocks Camilla, Catherine realizes something painful. Charity events aren't safe anymore. They're stages. And tonight, her stage was almost hijacked. Catherine's public face stays composed, but insiders describe a quiet shift, like she suddenly understood the fight isn't only behind palace doors, it's in front of donors, cameras, and the world. Her team moves instantly, because they understand the danger of a room full of powerful people feeling uncertainty. Donors don't like chaos. They don't like factions. They don't like the sense that a charity has become a proxy war for palace influence. Staff tighten the flow of the evening, smoothing transitions, redirecting attention back to the cause, keeping the gala's tone intact with the kind of quiet professionalism that hides panic. Catherine, meanwhile, has to perform grace under pressure, smiling, steady, calm, while absorbing the reality that someone attempted to shift her narrative in front of her own supporters. The incident threatens donor confidence and media narrative control in the same breath, because donors fund legitimacy and media shapes it. Catherine balances diplomacy with a growing awareness of internal rivalry, realizing that what looks like a single blocked speech could become tomorrow's story. Who was stopped? Why were they stopped? What were they going to say? That question alone can swallow a charity event whole. And privately, Catherine begins asking the question that stings the most. Why did Camilla have access to speak at all? Who allowed that? Who assumed it would be safe? And who tonight decided it was not? William becomes a protective force almost immediately, not in loud confrontation, but in boundaries. He pushes for tighter control, stricter approvals, fewer optional moments where someone can improvise a power move under polite lighting. Because he knows something Catherine is only now being forced to learn in real time, the palace doesn't need a throne room to fight. It can fight in a ballroom. It can fight in a charity program. It can fight through a microphone. Then the cliffhanger sharpens the entire night into something darker. Catherine's aide discovers a second version of the speech draft. Not the approved one. Not the short, safe, ceremonial one. Another version, different phrasing, different emphasis, different intent. A draft that suggests the gala was about to become a strategic moment, not a supportive one. And suddenly, Catherine isn't just recovering from a public interruption. She's staring at evidence that someone planned to shift her story while smiling. And if Anne received a last-minute do not allow instruction, the next question is terrifying: who gave it? And what were they afraid Camilla would say? And that second draft suggests Camilla wasn't going to praise Catherine, she was going to reframe her. If Charles wanted Camilla to speak, Anne wouldn't have dared block her. Which means either Charles allowed it, or Charles wasn't in control of it. Both possibilities are explosive. Because the king's silence at a public humiliation isn't neutral, it's a signal. And when the signal comes from the top, everyone inside the palace starts calculating what it means. Is Camilla losing influence? Or is the monarchy quietly preparing the public to see her differently? Charles's absence or restrained reaction becomes a strategic mystery almost instantly, because the palace reads silence the way it reads law. If he was present and didn't move, then he chose not to protect Camilla in the one moment she needed protection most. If he wasn't present, then the question becomes even darker: who allowed the night to proceed with such risk, and why was the king not positioned to control it? Either way, the result is the same. Camilla is blocked, Anne is unchallenged, and the room absorbs a new reality without anyone officially announcing it. Advisors, according to whispers, may have urged Charles not to intervene to avoid escalation. A public confrontation between Anne and Camilla would have turned a charity gala into an international spectacle. Stopping it quietly would be framed as protecting the institution. But protecting the institution often means sacrificing a person's pride, and Charles has spent years sacrificing reputation for love. Now, suddenly, love is not being defended. That shift doesn't feel accidental. It feels like calculation. It feels like someone decided the optics of Camilla speaking were more dangerous than the optics of Camilla being stopped. And the deeper explanation takes shape. Charles may be under pressure to protect Catherine's rising public role. Catherine's charity work is not just kindness, it is credibility, the kind of credibility the monarchy needs as it moves into its next era. If Catherine's stage is seen as hijackable, donors become uneasy. If donors become uneasy, the Queen's future legacy work becomes vulnerable. And if that vulnerability grows, the palace begins to look less like a stable institution and more like a family fighting over microphones. Charles cannot afford that. Not now. Not with scrutiny already sharpened. So the silence begins to look like a boundary being enforced from above, even if it breaks something private in the process. Camilla's camp interprets the silence as betrayal. Because in their world, proximity to the king is supposed to be a guarantee. It's supposed to mean protection, endorsement, inevitability. Anne's move, meanwhile, suggests shifting internal alliances because it proves someone felt safe enough to stop Camilla publicly. That safety doesn't come from personality. It comes from backing, from knowing you won't be overruled, from knowing the institution will protect your decision afterward, even if it humiliates someone powerful in the moment. Then the most chilling detail slips through in a whisper from a senior aide. This was approved containment. 2 words that turn an awkward interruption into a controlled operation. Approved means permission. Containment means threat. Together, they imply the palace wasn't reacting to a Gala mishap, it was managing a risk in real time, stopping a message from landing, stopping a narrative from forming, stopping Camilla from claiming something she wasn't allowed to claim. And if that's true, the next part of the story becomes inevitable, because people who are contained don't accept containment quietly. Camilla doesn't explode in public. She collects her rage and takes it behind closed doors, where power is real. Being blocked at Catherine's gala isn't just embarrassing, it's destabilizing, because it tells every donor and every courtier that Camilla can be stopped. And once a figure of influence is seen as stoppable, the wolves circle. Sources suggest Camilla's camp begins planning a countermove within hours, quiet pressure, strategic leaks, and a campaign to reclaim control of the narrative. The first wave is aimed at donors, because donors are the heartbeat of charity influence. Camilla's allies contact them with careful language, framing Anne as overstepping, implying the interruption was rude, unnecessary, even disrespectful to the unity the gala was supposed to represent. At the same time, friendly media hints that Catherine's team orchestrated the humiliation, subtle, poisonous suggestions designed to make Catherine look calculating rather than charitable, ambitious rather than devoted. The goal isn't to prove a story. The goal is to plant doubt, because doubt weakens loyalty faster than any headline. Behind the scenes, pressure mounts on palace staff who supported Anne. The message is never direct, never written, never provable. It arrives as cold distance, vanished opportunities, sudden scrutiny. Camilla's camp wants names. Who warned Anne? Who held the second draft? Who decided the speech was unapproved? And in the palace, the hunt for answers often becomes punishment for whoever is easiest to blame. Camilla tests Charles's loyalty, seeking intervention not necessarily because she believes he will publicly defend her, but because she needs to know whether she is still protected inside the private structure of the monarchy. William's camp responds by tightening protection around Catherine's public engagements, treating every appearance like a potential battlefield now. Because once one gala becomes a war zone, every stage becomes dangerous. Then the cliffhanger lands with the weight of a threat. Camilla threatens to withdraw support from a major royal initiative. It's a move designed to remind everyone she still matters, that she still has influence, that she can still create discomfort if she is pushed too far. But the threat carries a risk, because it only works if people still believe she has leverage. And after Anne stopped her in public without consequences, that belief is no longer certain. And if it was containment, then the palace isn't reacting to a gala mishap, it's managing a crisis already underway. But her threat only matters if she still has leverage, and Anne's move suggests that leverage is slipping. Anne's intervention wasn't only about Catherine, it was about the late Queen's legacy, the invisible red line inside the monarchy that no one is allowed to cross. If Camilla's speech was going to position her as the moral heir to the Queen's charitable identity, that would be unforgivable to those who guard the Queen's memory like a national asset. And Anne, more than anyone, is known to protect that memory without compromise. Because within the palace there are roles you can negotiate, and there are territories you cannot touch. The Queen's charitable legacy is treated as sacred institutional ground, the one place where personal ambition is supposed to dissolve into service. The Queen's name, in that world, is not simply remembrance, it is credibility. It is stability. It is the moral shield the monarchy relies on when everything else is questioned. And that is why Anne's reaction makes sense to insiders in a way it will never make sense to the public. If Camilla's words were about to blur the line between Catherine's work and Camilla's influence, it wasn't just overreach. It was encroachment on the most protected memory in the building. Anne has always been seen as one of the strictest guardians of that memory. Not because she seeks conflict, but because she refuses to let the Queen's legacy become something people borrow for personal positioning. In that framework, Anne sees Catherine as the rightful steward of the public goodwill the Queen built over decades. Catherine's role in charity isn't viewed as a side project, it's viewed as continuity, a calm, disciplined extension of the monarchy's most stable identity. That's why donors and trustees, the people who fund and validate royal causes, tend to prefer stability and continuity with Catherine. She feels safe to them, predictable, service-oriented, a future-facing figure who doesn't need to seize the spotlight because the spotlight follows her naturally. So when Camilla appears to attach herself to Catherine's success, the palace doesn't read it as support. It reads it as strategy. A move to reposition herself as essential in the charitable space that Catherine is increasingly defining. And once you understand that, Anne's intervention stops feeling like personality clash and starts feeling like defense. Defense of the Queen's legacy, defense of Catherine's role, defense of the monarchy's future leadership structure, because the incident hints at a shift toward William and Catherine as the undisputed public face of the next era. The gala wasn't just a night of donations. It was a glimpse of tomorrow, and someone tried to insert themselves into that tomorrow. At first, it looks like a moment of personal friction, a curt interruption, a public humiliation. But the final twist is darker. Anne blocking Camilla may have been part of a wider palace operation to contain Camilla's influence before it spills into the next era of the monarchy. The gala wasn't the beginning. It was the first visible strike, and if that's true, then tonight wasn't about a microphone. It was about control of the future. Because the details begin to feel too clean to be accidental. Evidence suggests coordination, timing, staff movement, controlled optics. The interruption happens with minimal chaos, as if the palace had already decided how to stop Camilla without creating a scene that would damage Catherine's event. The staff response is immediate. The flow of the evening is protected. The room is redirected back to the cause with almost rehearsed efficiency. That is what makes the moment feel like an operation rather than a reaction. In a palace that lives on planning, the cleanest interventions are almost always premeditated. And then the implications widen. Camilla's network appears to be systematically limited in key public spaces, less access to stages, less control over messaging, fewer opportunities to position herself beside Catherine's work. William and Catherine are being positioned as the undisputed charitable face of the monarchy, not through loud announcements, but through quiet control of who stands where, who speaks when, and who is allowed to be associated with what. It's subtle, but it's powerful. Because in royal life, public identity is built through repetition, the faces people see, the voices people hear, the figures who appear at the center of meaningful moments. Charles may be cooperating quietly to avoid a greater scandal, because if internal factions are battling over Catherine's stage, the palace cannot afford a public war. Anne becomes the enforcer because she is trusted, and feared trusted to act without personal theatrics, feared because she doesn't bluff. If Anne says no, it tends to stay no. And that makes her the perfect instrument for containment, the one person who can draw a boundary without looking like she's fighting for personal power. Then the cliffhanger lands like confirmation. A second planned speech is reportedly cancelled days later. Another event, another moment where Camilla's presence would have mattered, and suddenly another door closes. That pattern suggests the palace isn't improvising. It's executing. Step by step, quietly, in public view. And the longer it continues, the more terrifying the conclusion becomes. The monarchy isn't simply managing tonight's embarrassment. It's reshaping who gets access to the future. And those new rules would confirm the truth Camilla fears most. Her access is being quietly cut off. Because once the palace starts cutting access in public, the real battle isn't about what was said. It's about who is allowed to speak next. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.